Are we alone in the universe? And so, some scientists are out there trying to answer that question. Then there's the subject of communication. Instantaneous communication across millions of light years. How is that possible? Well, I would like to have you listen to something. And I was doing a little bit of research earlier, and I came upon this particular website. And so there are some, I don't know exactly, their qualifications, but there are some physicists out there studying the nature of quantum physics and reality. And so the person who brought up the information actually changed something before I had a chance to record it. Now, I don't know if the other part's going to get deleted or not, but because I'm trying to get in there, and you've just got to listen to this. This validates my project. Have a listen.
Of course, be huge technological implications, which we could probably only dimly foresee. The most obvious would be superluminal signaling across large distances in space, our solar system, the wider universe. You would be able to signal instantaneously. You would no longer be bounded by the speed of light.
Anthony believes this might help us answer that most beguiling of questions. Are we or aren't we alone in the universe?
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence as we have it today assumes that advanced aliens that may be technologically millions or even billions of years ahead of us are still signaling to each other using radio waves. Now, from the point of view of pilot wave theory, signaling using radio waves is as primitive as it would be to signal using water waves. If we found particles coming from a very distant planetary system, photons incoming from a million light years away, and we find that these photons break the Born rule in, for example, a two-slit experiment, then I think those particles would be worth studying for signs of a possible message from a remote civilization.
Let me just play that back. Okay, I want to play this back. And you have a listen right here. This needs to be played twice. And I take that back. The part that I thought was deleted was actually not deleted. It's actually still there. I'm just trying to grab the stream here. And again, it's crazy. It really is crazy that I found this because I was having some issues as far as building my project, and I had some questions regarding trying to get the information. And I discovered something a few days ago when I was doing my research, and they added this slit to the setup, which I don't know exactly where that video is, honestly. It showed a picture of a mirror, and then I think it should. Oh God, I gotta do a message right in the middle of my broadcast at all times. It's no big deal, but just bear with me for a moment here. I just cannot deal with this right now. Alright, so, I'm trying to set up my stream here. Just listen to this again.
Anthony believes this might help us answer that most beguiling of questions. Are we or aren't we alone in the universe?
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence as we have it today assumes that advanced aliens that may be technologically millions or even billions of years ahead of us are still signaling to each other using radio waves. Now, from the point of view of pilot wave theory, signaling using radio waves is as primitive as it would be to signal using water waves. If we found particles coming from a very distant planetary system, photons incoming from a million light years away, and we find that these photons break the Born rule in, for example, a two-slit experiment, then I think those particles would be worth studying for signs of a possible message from a remote civilization.
Did you get it? Did you get what he was saying? Those particles would be worth studying. Now, this is not a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. It's almost freaky to the point of being scary again, because I've had situations in my research and over the last 20 some odd years where I would discover something, and in the process of that discovery, peekaboo. In the process of that discovery, I'm gonna do a little FaceTime here. Yep. It shocked me. It like something went through me that I couldn't explain. It was almost like I can't do this, or the world is not ready, or I don't have the capability, or even if I built the whole project, I still couldn't get close enough to get these messages, right? But now, so he's talking about the particles in the two-slit experiment. These are the particles worth studying. Now, he said those particles could have these messages from remote alien intelligences, right? So, I'm going to bring something up here. I'm going to bring it up on the web page, and that changes when observed. Double slit experiment. Right. Oh, well, this is interesting here. What? I don't. Oh, this is interesting. I've just made another discovery. Okay. Wow, wowie, wowie. Okay, there's another website. The person that, okay, now there's even another website where this guy is on. This guy is everywhere. I'm not mentioning his name because that's just what I'm not going to do. The universe's deeper secret, what is nothing? This is some website that's just used doing an article. But this particular one, let me just see here what they have for videos. So evidently he did, how long ago did he do this? This was 13 years ago. 13 years ago that he did this. So he's going to explain what's called the double slit experiment, and whether or not the video gets cut off or not, I don't know. I really don't care. But I haven't seen this video, okay? And so, I may kind of brush through it a little bit. I may stop the video, for copyright reasons or whatever. Basically, it's a commentary. So they say that you should be able to do commentaries on copyrighted things, to question things, okay? So on and so forth. So let's have a go, and I'll shut my trapper. And I'm gonna fix this this screen here before we get started. Probably just make myself a little bit smaller and just set myself up in space here. I can make his a little bigger probably. Doesn't really get that big due to whatever, Alright, that's good enough for me. Let's go ahead and have a listen here.
So there's lots of weird stuff that goes on in the quantum world. Hit you with this, and it basically tells you what it's all about. It's called the two-slit experiment. I'll start with this. Imagine you have a source of light shining against a screen with two slits. Now, for the pedants in the audience, this source of light has to be monochromatic light of a particular wavelength, whereas, of course, a light bulb is white light, and that's made up of all the colors of the spectrum, lots of different wavelengths. But imagine this is just a single wavelength of light, and you can see the light is coming out in waves like ripples in a pond. That's the nature of wave-like behavior. As the light hits the screen, it squeezes through the two slits, and each slit in turn on the other side becomes almost like a new source of light, and the light spreads out, it diffracts. And as the waves of light overlap, they will interfere with each other. So where a crest hits a trough, they will cancel. Where a crest hits a crest, they will amplify, and so on. And so on the back screen, you end up with what's called an interference pattern, a series of light and dark fringes, where the waves have either cancelled out or worked together in phase.
Now, He's not really showing it very well, but if you look on the far right-hand side, the very center of that waveform, that wave is larger than the outside waves. And also, this, I don't know if he's going to get into the explanation, but these are particles. This is not entirely waves, okay? So you've got photons, which is a particle, and it's coming out of the light source. It goes into these two slits, which are a little bit thick, by the way. And so they're using two slits instead of the one slit first and then the two slit. If you put the light source through one slit first, it parallels the beams. And but then when you put it through the second slit, it does this business right here. And so, but these waves are coming out, you know, we're looking like top down, okay? And so they're bunches of particles that add up over time. And as the particles are added up over time, they form these dark and light areas, and the light area is largest in the middle, and so on and so forth. Now, that's looking at a face of the, it's like painting a picture, and then you get rid of it, and you take a picture of it, then you get rid of it, you take another picture, and so on and so on and so on. But this all happens very fast, so it's like boom, right? So I have intentions in my setup to slow light down and delay the process of light getting from point A to point B and studying that area. But anyway, the previous physicist mentioned this area where you have these fringes is the area that we need to study, that area may have the messages. And so 2 or 3 days prior to this, I saw a video that had a picture of this experiment, but it was a little bit different. It showed the colors, and the colors were kind of dispersed out, and in the end, it was one slit going into the camera, similar to the Schlering experiment. So there's some connectivity going on here. You know, I don't know exactly what all that connectivity is, but, you know, it is what it is, right?
That's fine. That's not quantum mechanics. That's a property of light that goes back over 200 years that we've known about since the early 19th century. Imagine doing the same experiment again, but doing it not with waves, but with particles. Do it with grains of sand. So this is the same experiment, but I've tipped it 90 degrees. Rather than waves that are spread out that wash up against the two slits and squeeze through, here you've got individual particles of sand, and each particle will...
Okay, well, I don't know what's going on here, but particles of sand, he's doing this against gravity. Gravity has a nature, and so, the fact that we're observing it really means nothing. The forces of gravity are going to have more effect on a grain of sand than they are on a photon. Okay, a photon is like 10 to the minus 27 kilograms per square meter, whatever the heck it is. You know, so yeah.
Either go through one slit or the other, and so you see they will sort of drain through, and you get two bumps underneath each of the slits. So the two peaks is reminiscent of particle-like behavior, whereas the multiple pattern of interference is wave-like behavior. What if we do the same experiment with atoms? Well, so imagine we have an atom gun, something that can fire atoms, a stream of atoms. You can't see them because they're very small. Let's block off one of the two slits. So these two slits are you know, the dimensions and separation of the slits is chosen appropriately to show us how atoms do things. And so far, so good. Nothing strange here. You'll see a lot of atoms hitting the back screen. So this will now have to be some sort of photosensitive screen whereby when an atom hits it, it'll give off a little flash of light to say the atom has arrived here. So the atoms are arriving as these little pinpricks of light that we see. Of course, a lot of the atoms will be blocked by the first screen. They won't go through that slit. But those that do get through to the other side, you can see there's a bit of spreading of the atoms. But if we didn't know anything about atoms, we'd say, well, that's fine, we can understand that. A lot of the atoms are going clean through the slit. Some are sort of maybe bouncing off the edge of the slit, and so they're sort of being deflected a bit, which is why you get a bit of a spread. The first mystery of quantum mechanics comes when we open the second slit. Because now we see something that's very much like the interference pattern we got with light.
Okay, so while that is true, the other thing is the self-similarity of each band. Even though you've got the center band, which is completely blocked by the two slits, is the largest, but each of the bands have this other information on it. These are with atoms, okay? They're not photons, they're like maybe helium atoms or something like that. So anyway.
Rather than having two bands of spots where the atoms have gone through the two slits, it's as though the atoms have gone through the slits behaving like waves, and you get interference of the waves and you get these bands. If we know nothing about atoms or quantum mechanics, you could try and rationalize it and say, well, you know, maybe atoms behave in a very strange way, and only a certain number of them are allowed to all sit together. And so, you know, me and my gang, we're all going to go on this slit. No, sorry, no room for you. You go to the next slit above. And by the way, there's this rule that no one can go in between the two bands, but a few naughty atoms do. So there's a bit of a scatter. You know, we don't. There could be some
down on the bottom. If you can explain
forces
this
between
using common
atoms
sense and
that
logic,
make
do
them
let me know,
coordinate their
because there is
actions
a
in a
Nobel
way
Prize
to
for
give
you.
this pattern. That's not mysterious. That's just, we just don't know how atoms do things. But we can be clever, and we can force the issue. What if we
was
were to
13
not
years
send the
ago.
atoms all through at once, but send them through one at a time? Leave enough of a gap for the atom to get through to hit the screen. Of course, as I say, some atoms will hit the first screen and not get through, but those that get through will hit the back screen. So let's run the experiment again slowly, and gradually you'll see as the atoms go through, they'll look like they're just randomly arriving on the other side. You keep sending atoms through one at a time, and gradually that same pattern appears. So each atom by itself is somehow contributing its small part to the overall wave-like behavior that we see in the interference pattern. How does it do it? How does, we know the atom.
So this is the question that I was asking like a couple of weeks ago. How is it that one particle has all the information of the puzzle, and when all the particles go through, then the puzzle completes itself? But one particle has all the information of the puzzle. He's actually asking this question.
Atom's a tiny, localized particle. We can't see it. It's too small to even see under a microscope. We're firing it at the screen with the two slits. Some moment later, you see a flash of light on the back screen. It's arrived in a localized point. It's not spread itself out. You don't get sort of like a wash of a faint light across the whole screen. It's a little point. The atom is localized. It's arrived in a certain location. And yet, it somehow seems to have been aware of there being two slits, not one, because it's given rise to this interference pattern. How does one atom do that? Does it split in half? Does it become like a cloud that goes through both? Well, we can try and be even cleverer. What if we were to spy on the atom and see where it goes? We can gently just observe which slit it goes through.
Right, and so theoretically they said they did that, and when they observed the particles going through at the slit location, it behaved like particles and not waves. The active observation changed the effect. What the heck, you know?
So you put a detector just above the upper slit that will flash or beep whenever it sees an atom go through that top slit. Sure enough, You fire the atoms through, one at a time. 50% of the time, the detector will beep. The other 50% of the time it doesn't, the assumption being that the atom has gone through the lower slit. But of course, I've been cheeky here. I haven't shown you the results of the experiment. That's what you get. 50% of the time, it beeps, and you see a spot arrive adjacent to the upper slit. The other half of the time, it doesn't beep, but you see a spot arrive at the lower slit. So, yeah, it's picked out the atoms that have gone through the upper slit and not the ones that have gone through. So each atom does go through one slit or the other. But that's a different result to what we had earlier. So here's the last bit of sneakiness that we can play with atoms. Surely now, you know, we're going to get to grips with it. Leave the detector there, but just very quietly go and unplug it. Don't let the atoms know that you're not spying on them. Make them think that you're still detecting them. So, yeah, okay, we're going to run the experiment, atoms. Okay, get ready, one at a time. We're going to be checking on you. All right, so run the experiment again. Now, if you can explain this using common sense and logic, do let me know, because there's a Nobel Prize for you.
All right,
Quantum entanglement is the idea that particles, however far apart they are, still somehow, their fates remain intertwined. They are still aware of each other's existence.
He's talking about quantum entanglement there, right? So the idea of quantum entanglement implies this idea of non-local space. Non-local space, and the two spaces are connected to each other. Now, the only thing I could think of is that the information that the particle receives is the last bit of information it receives to send out. So, when you observe something, you're sending out something. You're sending out a wave, and you're reflecting that wave back onto itself and getting information. When the photons, theoretically, they're an effect. They're not this little particle. They're not particles, in fact. They're evidence of an exchange of energy. So an exchange of energy happens, and a massless, a particle that has no mass goes riding along the waves and has information with it. How is it a particle can be massless? I mean, how can you get waves from something that has no mass? It makes absolutely no sense. So he really kind of didn't go into the idea of the whys of when you, in order to detect something, you're like, see, what I'm doing is I might be sending a beam across, like a light wave's traveling in this direction, and I'm sending another beam across this way, and they're the same identical beam, and you can get them in phase, and you can interfere, okay? So, in a way, you're kind of observing because you're interacting with it. So now, what happens if that act of interaction, because the beam's going back and forth like this, and you got something going back and forth like this, so you can make them identical, the waves, so that they don't cancel each other, okay? And so, or you can make them out of phase so that they cancel, and then something happens with the noise because of this effect. I want to do this, and I can't, according to my setup that I've got now. Before I had said that I was going to put another beam splitter and send the beam down towards the side. Well, I don't have enough room to do that, I've discovered. So I've got a wave coming in this way. It's going to bounce off the mirror, and the beam splitter for the main system is right underneath the mirror. It's like right there. And so that beam goes down 10 inches and it bounces back and comes through and goes into the detector. I don't have this distance to play with because I want the distance between my two mirrors to be as long as possible, and I can only get 10 inches. Unless if I put another beam splitter down below, send it riding along and down and back through another beam splitter down to the mirror, it's going to end up going through 4 beam splitters by the time it gets back because of this distance, right? The energy is going to get less and less and less of the control beam. It might be so much less that there's going to be nothing to do the calibration or see the fringes. I've got 4 of these beam splitters, so supposedly I found some other ones. The other ones are like really small. Now it's possible that I could take the other beam splitters and I could make a setting for them, because what I'm having is I've got these pipes coming down, these threaded rods. The threaded rods are going to hold the beam splitters, and so I could fabricate a setting for those 2 small ones. Maybe use a laser beam or something. Use the laser as the control source, and everything else go through whatever. The purpose of which would be to lengthen, to be able to lengthen that distance. I got no other way to do that. And they said if the length of the mirror 2 is twice the distance of 20 inches, which I can do because I can extend out the box and whatever, the distance from the control source light going into the beam splitter has to be that M2 distance. So say it's 20 inches, I've got an inch here, and I've got 9 inches over here, or I've got 8 inches here, and then I've got another inch going back up to the light source, or which in this case would be another mirror. And so that light beam is going to be reflected like this, and so that would force the light source to be back over here another 10 inches, so that I'd have a total of 20 inches going into the beam splitter from the light source. That's what I was told, that the light source distance has to be in order to see the fringes. It has to be that M2 distance. So, I understand that. The other thing is, I'm thinking that because of the reversal of the mirror and the beam splitter, the slit, so the first one is going to be a slit of 1. And that one slit is going to cause your parallel beams coming out, okay? Which is really nice, is kind of what I want. When it hits the beams, when it hits the grating, it may end up being sections of that color. I don't know. I have to do my calculations and stuff like that and set all that up to see what happens. And so then that's going to go, when it comes down here, it's going to go in a sense, it's going to be across like this. It's not going to be up and down. So it's going to go across and through the tuning cavity if it's there, over to the M2, and then all the way back out to the thing, detector. So if it's across, then the interference that's coming down, I think, has to be 90 degrees vertical. If it's lined up like this, up and down, the waves are going to go like this, and so the interference has to be across like this so that it interferes with that pattern. This interference coming across may be required, okay? And so, but how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take the original beam that's up here, it's in the center. But maybe what I can do is I can set that beam to 45 degrees like this, have it go through this way, and then have it hit another beam splitter that sends the original light source straight down on the side, or in another case, have it go through the beam splitter on the top that sends it down through the middle. So there's down through the middle, and there's another one that's at 45 degrees over a short distance, so that it goes straight down to where the tuning cavity is like this. That will hit another mirror and be able to send that signal laterally. So I'm going to have two options to do that. That's like more in depth into the thing. Today I managed to develop my legs for this actually looks kind of like a leg, doesn't it? So I've got 4 of these. I got 2 for the front, 2 for the back, and I've made some adjustments to the back part. It's actually going to be a little bit wider here. This is kind of an example, and so this would be like looking this way, and so the mirrors and the beam split would be like this, and the threaded rods are going this way, and they're going to go into a wall that's part of the stands. There's one on each corner around the interferometer setup, and so there's threaded rods, and the springs will hold the mirrors on the threaded rods. The threaded rods are tunable from the outside and from the top, so that's pretty cool. Now the one at the bottom, the first mirror at the bottom is going to be a control mirror, and once it's set, hopefully it usually stays where it's going to be because it's flat like this. That mirror is tuned separate from everything else, and then when you put it all together, it should be pretty close. But yeah, so as an update, I cut the plastic for the 2 rear ones and the 2 ones in the front. And I've also cut plastic that connects the 2, the front and the back, and that's going to be on the side. I'll put screws through this way, like there'll be a piece of plastic that goes across this way. I'll put a screw in here, and what that screw is going to do is going to hold the spring for the up and down threaded rods for the beam splitter. So that problem was solved. And the bottom plate, the bottom's going to have a plate down here with a mirror, and maybe I can put another hole in there. There might be 2 holes or something. Come to think of it, probably not, or unless I'm able to use a wire. I can run a wire up in between the springs that hold up the mirror. And that wire will hold another spring which holds the threaded rod that's up here. Now, I don't know, I'm building this as I go along, but 75% of the design is already there. So I thought that was very interesting that this fellow was talking about those are the atoms, those are the particles we should be exploring. And I just want to play it again, honestly. I really do. I don't want to play that, but whatever that was. Let's see if I can even find it. Did I totally? Oh yeah, it's right here. So this fellow, I guess he's been around for 13 years at least, so he did that discussion on the slit experiment. But he had just put up a new website, I guess, and I give him credit because he seems to be talking about strange things, and I wanna listen to one of the other ones that he's got up in here. But yeah, you've just got to hear this again because it is just so crazy, and I'm just really blown away by the idea that it's there. Have a listen.
Anthony believes this might help us answer that most beguiling of questions. Are we or aren't we alone in the universe?
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence as we have it today assumes that advanced aliens that may be technologically millions or even billions of years ahead of us are still signaling to each other using radio waves. Now, from the point of view of pilot wave theory, signaling using radio waves is as primitive as it would be to signal using water waves. If we found particles coming from a very distant planetary system, photons incoming from a million light years away, and we find that these photons break the Born rule in, for example, a two-slit experiment, then I think those particles would be worth studying for signs of a possible message from a remote civilization.
Yeah. What do you say?
Those particles would be worth studying for signs of a possible message from a remote civilization.
Yeah. Okay, this is not a sign. Okay, this is a sign. This is not a coincidence. I just landed on this purely this was not by accident. I was led to this site. I was led to this. This is telling me that if the two slits are created in the experiment, and then you run those, because I'm planning on running the light waves into some chaos and complexity visual equations and trying to pick out that data. He's saying it right there. I mean, this confirms beyond a shadow of a doubt that I am on a trail. I'm the only person doing this, okay? No one in the world is doing this. And I met this fellow by the name of Erland Babcock, and he was telling me about connecting sounds to the laser and sending that laser beam out into the detector and so on and so forth. And he was bouncing the laser off of a speaker. And so what you can actually do is when you have, you got the beam splitter and you've got the mirror M2, and so when that light hits M2, what you can do is you can take a piezoelectric vibrator and you can vibrate that second mirror, okay? And when that laser hits that second mirror, it's going to vibrate, because what you're doing is you're actually changing, well, it's not really refraction, but you're affecting the light wave at a frequency that the lasers can get modulated. So it's actually going to be like not pulse width, but frequency modulation or whatever. It's going to bounce back and forth at a certain frequency, but it's affecting the entire light wave. Now, that might act as a beacon, but you can only go up to ultrasonics. You can't go up to 1 gigahertz, right? So you can't, I don't know if you can vibrate that thing at such a high frequency. The only other way to do that would be to use electromagnetics, right? So maybe if they said something about using the solenoid. If the solenoid was in the direction, if the solenoid happens and the magnetic waves go around in a circle and the light's going through, what happens is there's a non-local event that happens out here. It's not local to that magnetic field, because the solenoid concentrates the magnetic field in the center, and so it's going to accelerate those particles. But this is photons, this is not electrons. But you'd have to use, like, you could use the Faraday effect, all right? And they use more current. You'd have to use a lot of current around this coil, and the coil would have to be inside. And what I want to do is well, I'll be counterintuitive if I put mineral oil in that, but you can use mineral oil because mineral oil is used in the high voltage transformers to prevent arcing. So you've got light waves going through here, and you want to intensify the light waves at a certain frequency, like 1 gigahertz, right? So which is a very high frequency. So maybe that coil is like really really small, and you've got to put a lot of power into that um, in order to get that to happen. 1 gigahertz at whatever wattage or whatever. Maybe not. But now the detector, which I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not going to look it up. Um, I've got two of them. The OPT Opt 101, I found out, has a very low gain bandwidth product, meaning it's only uh, 14 kilohertz. So, like, if this laser beam is vibrating, it's not going to see 450 kilohertz. It's only going to go up to about 15 or 20 kilohertz, and then it's going to drop off. It's not going to see it. Whether that's actually true or not, I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about in the sense of that bandwidth. But the other ones that I ordered, those have a wide bandwidth. They go up to 2 gigahertz, I think. Like, I don't know what I ordered. I got this photodiode. It's a photodiode. The other one is a photodiode built in. It has a built-in op amp. Now, that also creates problems because when you've got a circuit going on inside there, it's got influence to outside influence, radio communications or whatever could get in there and screw it up. Stray capacitance, God only knows, right? Um, I've got them, so I could try one and see what happens. We could actually set up two of them. We can use one and then slide the other one over and then use that one. It's a different circuit, like, set the circuit up and it goes into that detector and, back and forth type of thing. But that other detector is just a diode. There's no op amp with it. So when the light wave hits that, that is a wider bandwidth, and I think it goes up to 2 gigahertz. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run that signal into this transistor that I found, and that transistor is going to act as a buffer, a unity gain buffer, and then I'll have another one that's just like it, and maybe that will amplify and filter that signal. And what we can do is we can tune that. So I sound like the guy on Independence Day. He was doing a movie, and so we can set that up so we can tune. We can have it broadband. And then what we could do is when we find a signal on the SDR that's going to have a low output impedance, and we can send that signal to the SDR, and we can find out what frequency we're having activity. Once we have that frequency, we can set in the tuning of the second, the filter in whatever combination, and we can go ahead and when we tune it, we're making that amplification signal is going to be more of a point like this. It's going to be like a curve, and it's going to get rid of all the other noise and stuff, and it's just going to amplify that region of interest. If I look real quick, and let's say, I don't remember what the name of that SDR is. RSP1A, I think. RSP1A. Okay, so I don't know if that's SDR play RSP. This is it right here. Okay, good. So it should talk about specifications. Get a 50 ohm input. This says 10 megahertz visible bandwidth, continuous coverage from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz. That is just freaking amazing. I paid less than $100 for this some years ago. They don't even make it anymore. And so we've got a 10 megahertz visible bandwidth, which is, I don't think it's continuous coverage, and when you get the right programs and stuff like that, and it has, we wanted sensitivity. It's got noise figures. The noise figures are rather large at the low end. The best noise figures around 100 megahertz and 5 dB at 1500 megahertz. It's got front end filtering, automatically configured front end filtering, 2 megahertz low pass. It's got band pass filters, 2 to 12 megahertz, 12 to 30, 30 to 60. It's got some filtering, 420 to 1,000. It's got a high pass at 1,000. It's got notch filters. It's got IF bandwidth filters. Oh my God, this thing's got everything. Now, I don't know if you can put this in a cold environment or not. I don't really think that makes a lot of difference. If you put it in a cold environment and the humidity is not right, and you get moisture in there, maybe it's possible I could put that in a hermetically sealed unit. I don't know. It says temperature stability 0.5 parts per million. Infield trimmable to 0.01 parts per million. You want to keep the input power low. It says 10 dBm, but there might be a trimmable thing on there for the temperature. I don't know. That'd be interesting. But anyway, that's that deal. So, what else? I guess that's it. We listened to that. I worked on the supports. So the next step is I still have to do the beam splitter holder. I gotta do the beam splitter holder, and I gotta do the rod things. And I don't know if I'm just gonna go get that key or what. I have no idea. I gotta do something, and I'm not being allowed to do it. I'm gonna go get a key myself and have it made. I'm tired of this bullshit that I gotta deal with. We're gonna. So anyway, yeah. So that's that story. I can't think of anything else. So yeah, there's the holders. I found they're in a plastic. I'm using a bunch of used plastic from used stuff that I've torn apart. And so there's this little slotted holes, which are perfect. They're 1024 size. I can put the threaded rod right through it. But the neat thing of it is the slotted holes has these little tabs on the side. And I can drill a hole through the tabs on the side, and that hole is going to hold the spring. And so it's very, very delicate, easy to break, and so on and so forth. Maybe what I could do is before I take that apart, I could drill the holes through each of the tabs and then cut it out and work with it. I'm gonna need, I got these two mirrors, so that's a total of 8. I've got the beam splitter, which is going to add another, so I need a total of 3 times 4 is 12. The other ones, I don't know, like the mirror, if I put a mirror in the middle, let's see, no, wait, if that would be, wait, there's space for, I could put a beam splitter between the two, the entry mirror and the grating. If I put a beam splitter there because it's in the middle, I can put the beam splitter there and send a control signal down to the wave in the top of the unit. But I can't do it. It would have to be in the middle, wouldn't it? And I could actually do that because I've got threaded rods there already. Oh, holy oh, discovery! I've made another discovery. Yes. And so if I'm limited to going down like this, what I can do is I can change the orientation of the grating. I can use polarizers. I can do whatever it takes to get a signal. So that signal would come down through the top of the tuning cavity and end up in the bottom. And that could be another camera, or it could be a detector. It's got to be, but it's not an interferometer though. That's the problem. No. Wait, that's not true. So the beam splitter is here. It goes down to the. It goes through the tuning cavity down to the bottom, and the bottom's going to have another mirror. That mirror goes back up and reflects. I can't have that. I can't have that go into the. Oh, that was not. That's not. If that were to be, it would have to go back up through. If it goes down, it goes. Oh, so it would actually go straight up, but it's going to reflect off of that mirror, though. So then that signal that's going this way, it's not supposed to reflect off of that mirror. I don't. That's a good question. That's another problem. You know, it's going to go up here, back into the source, and the other part's going to go straight through to the detector. I don't know. But there's an option there. Okay, so there's that part. So I just kind of figured that out just now. So yeah, so we're gonna do the beam splitter holder, and we're gonna do the eyelets. I'm gonna call them eyelets. So I need 12 eyelets, and then I've got 4. I only have 6 for the. So the tuning units. The top tuning unit is going to tune the back grating. This is a change in the design. The bottom unit is going to change the mirror, which is going to be facing this way. The first mirror is going to be this way. It'll be tensioned. And that tuning is made using the threaded rods. And then it'll be coarse tuned and then fine tuned using the threaded rods. So that one will be tuned on the bottom. The one on the Okay, so there's 2 tuning rods for the bottom. The rods at the top are stable, and there's going to be another set of tuning rods at the top which will tune the grating. Okay, so my 2 rods originally was going to be on the bottom. So now the 2 rods are going to be on the top, because the grating and the beam splitter down here are going to be held together with a spring on the side of the wall. I've decided, not on, if it's too noisy or something, then I can put the rods down there and connect them to the rods. Maybe that just adds more complication to the circuit. But if I do it this way. And then even still, if I were to change this to a spring-loaded section, I can move this over, move this down accordingly, and still use my extra 2 tuning rods. So I've got I've got 2 tuning rods at the top, and I've got 2 tuning rods at the bottom. That's a total of 4. And then over here for the beam splitter, I got 2 more tuning rods, so that's a total of 6. And so there's these little things that I have that go on the end of each tuning rod, and what they are is they attach to the tuning rod and they have a little flat surface. And so that means the beam splitter is going to be, the beam splitter is still attached to the spring-loaded threaded rod, but, and then there's springs that go off the top of the threaded rod, and there's a screw that goes down, and it tunes that threaded rod. But now there'll be the vibrational aspect is going to be gotten rid of, because if the tuning screw is going to be physically connected, it's going to stop the threaded rod in its place. So what I need to do then is I'm going to, because of gravity, so what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need, if I have the springs, I've got the springs here, or I have, so if I got 2 springs here, I got a spring at the bottom, and there's tension. So then I've got to have this tuning screw that goes down into here is got to be attached to the rod with another spring, and I don't know. I think I have. I'm not going to take it out right now, but I think so. Jesus, does that go in there? It don't fit in there, does it? These are all my little parts. Like, we're talking all of the fine-tuning screws and everything. Well, there's one here that's got all of the nuts on them. So this one has all of the nuts, and then, but this piece here, I don't know. This doesn't fit. That looks awful thin. The fuck is this? If I drop this, boy, would I be mad? I don't think that fits through there, does it? No, it does not. Why did I even get this? This is the tuning screw. Oh, the other ones go through the 1024. But I was thinking of using that for something. I don't know why that's so thin. So bear with me here. I'm going to try something. Oh, fuck, I just lost that nut. So you've got the tuning screw. I've got a bunch of nuts on here and shit. And so the tuning screw is like this. The spring, if the spring is held on like so, if the spring is held like this, is the, you know, I can't even see this shit, you know. Okay, so if the spring, there's flat ends of this nut. Okay, so if the spring comes down, it's not wrapped around the screw, but it's trapped in between the 2 nuts. Okay, so the 2 nuts with a lock washer which I actually found 4 of them. All right, so the spring is attached there, and that's going to put tension. There's going to be tension on those nuts. It might be, a little sideways tension, but there is going to be tension there. And so that tension should hold those nuts in place. And I should be able to move that spring ever so gently up and down by turning this screw. Isn't that shit, huh? That way, instead of using the faceplate, which I have on the other ones that are sideways, it's okay, because if there's any vibration, it's going to go up and down like this. And this one here will have a spring attached to it because it's fed by gravity. And so that's just going to increase or decrease the tension on this spring. So the bottom spring, like if there's a screw or whatever the hell it is down there, if we pull this down, we want it such that we can have the tension needs to be such that the laser is just below center, and then we can tune this up and even out the tension. We want to even the tension between the 2 springs. That's the goal. How to measure that, I'm not, it's more or less by eye type of thing. So that problem has just been solved. So I've got all of the design for the beam splitter, the 2 mirrors up at the top, the mirror on the bottom. That's all in place. The parts, I've got most of the parts built. I got to do the eyelets, the beam splitter thing, and then I actually might do, what I should do? I should do 2 of them and have another beam splitter go in between. It would be in between the mirrors so that it goes down and make a hole through the top, which is really good because if I use, well, no, it's not really good, but, well, yeah, it'll prevent it from leaking. It'll have a mirrored, or it'll have an opening so that the mineral fluid is supposed to go down through here. It's going to be fill up this cavity, and then there'll be there'll be an opening here, but I don't know about this opening. If it uses glass or something, it's going to refract at a certain angle, and I don't know exactly what that. So I can adjust that angle. You know what? It's going to hit this at 45 degrees, but if it refracts when it comes down and it goes through the glass in the tuning cavity, let's say if it refracts like this, then I can take that angle and I can adjust it so that it's parallel going down. And that one is going to be, you've got this, and you've got this. If you tune one of them, it kind of skews it. And if you tune them both, now the other thing is the mirror on the left, which I happen to have my this is the design, which you probably can't see it, but this is what I call the face plate, back plate. I call it a back plate. And so this is the back plate for the mirrors M1 and M2, and this is the mirror holders for M1 and M2. And so I discovered that the back plate, at first I thought the back plate was going to be like this, but you've got this stuff on the bottom, right? And so I lost my 10 inches of mirror dimension by setting it like this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the back plate like this, and now I've got another ½ an inch. I got barely enough room. There's like 1 inch right there. And I mean, I don't even know. I think there's enough room for tension for the 2 springs at 10 inches, I think. I don't know. Because there's got to be a way. I haven't figured out a way. It seems like I've got to drill another hole at the end of where the screw comes up and send a spring there. And I don't know why that particular hole was not drilled. So I don't know what I was thinking. I don't even know why those screws are there. Like, are they even supposed to be there? What is it that I don't remember. Maybe I gotta look at my papers and find out what I was doing here. But the other option is to take a spring where the screw comes up and you tie the spring to that, and then this is down below the end of the screw, and then the tension, the adjustment of the mirror is done with the screws on the 90-degree sections. Wait, no, there's one spring. I don't remember. I have to look it up. But anyway, so for the side, for the front panel for M2, like one is down here at the bottom, one is where? This is one, and this is one here. And so this would look like this. Now, adjustment of this mirror, this might be easier, okay, because this is the one that has to be adjusted. But even the mirror in M1 over here is going to have to get adjusted. So I can do this. I can all of this is going to be self-contained. Everything's going to be self-contained, except for the very top. And I still don't know about my light source and setting it up. You know, once I add all these parts together and see the puzzle, I'll see the whole picture and say, oh, I can do this, I can do that, right? So this one will be adjusted separately. Let's assume it's centered, it's all flat. This one here, it'll have the availability of probably all 4 adjustment screws, I guess. But I think there's a problem here, because what if this is off? If this is skewed, see, my adjusting springs are over here, but I think my adjustment screws are on the corner, and these are just tension springs. And so the space was made right here so that the screw goes up through the space, ties to the spring, and the spring, I think I've got to drill another hole right down here below the space here. You can see these other holes are really small, and there is enough room to put a hole there for the spring. And so the actual control adjustments are on the corner. This is up against the wall. I did this wrong here. So this is like up against this is up against. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. This contraption is, okay, so once the mirror gets placed in this ring, there's a space of 2 inches square, okay? That's going to be cut out in the opening of the front panel, and this whole section right here is going to get attached to an outside section of my box, which I have no idea how to do yet. Fuck. Otherwise, it goes inside the box, which there is a 10-inch. There may be room to do it, like, just barely. Right on the, I might be able to attach this to that plate that goes down at the bottom. So there's a plate that slides down. Now, if I were to attach it to that, and I could take the plate, well, this would just be attached to it, and then the plate itself actually extends out beyond this. It's like this wide. And so maybe what I've got to do is, once I get the parts in there, I've got to figure out how to run the plate down through. I think the plate's going to be on the outside of the stands, the 2 corner stands, and then there needs to be something that holds that plate in, because this will be attached to the plate. The plate will come down, and there's got to be slots there. I haven't designed that yet. I've designed, this is what you do. You start from the bottom, you work your way up, and, you know. I gotta go do some stuff, and I want to watch a movie, and that's where it is. And as one final note here, I will leave you with this. Bear with me here for a moment. And I will leave you with this little note right here. Let's see what we've got for music.
Anthony believes this might help us answer that most beguiling of questions. Are we or aren't we alone in the universe?
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence as we have it today assumes that advanced aliens that may be technologically millions or even billions of years ahead of us are still signaling to each other using radio waves. Of pilot wave theory, signaling using radio waves is as primitive as it would be to signal using water waves. If we found particles coming from a very distant planetary system, photons incoming from a million light years away, and we find that these photons break the Born rule in, for example, a two-slit experiment, then I think those particles would be worth studying for signs of a possible message from a remote civilization. Those particles would be worth studying for signs of a possible message from a remote civilization.